Chapter 1. The Brahmin Son. In the shade of the house, in the sunshine on the river bank by the boats, in the shade of the sallow wood and the fig tree, Siddhartha, the handsome Brahmin's son, grew up with his friend Govinda. The sun browned his slender shoulders on the river bank while bathing at the holy ablutions, at the holy sacrifices. Shadows passed across his eyes in the mango grove during play, while his mother sang during his father's teachings when with the learned men. Siddhartha had already long taken part in the learned men's conversations, had engaged in debate with Govinda, and had practiced the art of contemplation and meditation with him. Already he knew how to pronounce Om silently, this word of words, to say it inwardly with the intake of breath, when breathing out with all his soul, his brow radiating the glow of pure spirit. Already he knew how to recognize Atman within the depth of his being, indestructible, at one with the universe. There was happiness in his father's heart because of his son who was intelligent and thirsty for knowledge. He saw him growing up to be a great learned man, a priest, a prince among Brahmins. There was pride in his mother's breast when she saw him walking, sitting down and rising. Siddhartha, strong, handsome, supple-limbed, greeting her with complete grace. Love stirred in the hearts of the young Brahmin's daughters when Siddhartha walked through the streets of the town with his lofty brow, his king-like eyes, and his slim figure. Govinda, his friend, the Brahmin's son, loved him more than anybody else. He loved Siddhartha's eyes and clear voice. He loved the way he walked, his complete grace of movement. He loved everything that Siddhartha did and said, and above all, he loved his intellect, his fine ardent thoughts, his strong will, his high vocation. Govinda knew that he would not become an ordinary Brahmin, a lazy sacrificial official, an avaricious dealer in magic sayings, a conceited worthless orator, a wicked sly priest, or just a good stupid sheep amongst a large herd. No, and he, Govinda, did not want to become any of these, not a Brahmin like 10,000 others of their kind. He wanted to follow Siddhartha, the beloved, the magnificent. And if he ever became a god, if he ever entered the all-radiant, then Govinda wanted to follow him as his friend, his companion, his servant, his lance-bearer, his shadow. That was how everybody loved Siddhartha. He delighted and made everybody happy. But Siddhartha himself was not happy. Wandering along the rosy paths of the fig garden, sitting in contemplation in the bluish shade of the grove, washing his limbs in the daily bath of atonement, offering sacrifices in the depths of the shady mango wood with complete grace of manner, beloved by all, a joy to all, there was yet no joy in his own heart. Dreams and restless thoughts came flowing to him from the river, from the twinkling stars at night, from the sun's melting rays. Dreams and a restlessness of the soul came to him, arising from the smoke of the sacrifices, emanating from the verses of the Rig Veda, trickling through from the teachings of the old Brahmins. Siddhartha had begun to feel the seeds of discontent within him. He had begun to feel that the love of his father and mother, and also the love of his friend Govinda, would not always make him happy, give him peace, satisfy and suffice him. He had begun to suspect that his worthy father and his other teachers, the wise Brahmins, had already passed on to him the bulk and best of their wisdom, that they had already poured the sum total of their knowledge into his waiting vessel, and the vessel was not full, his intellect was not satisfied, his soul was not at peace, his heart was not still. The ablutions were good, but they were water. They did not wash sins away. They did not relieve the distressed heart. The sacrifices and the supplication of the gods were excellent, but were they everything? Did the sacrifices give happiness? And what about the gods? Was it really Prajapati who had created the world? Was it not Atman, he alone, who had created it? Were not the gods' forms created like me and you, mortal, transient? Was it therefore good and right? Was it a sensible and worthy act to offer sacrifices to the gods? To whom else should one offer sacrifices? To whom else should one pay honor? But to him, Atman, the only one? And where was Atman to be found? Where did he dwell? Where did his eternal heart beat? If not within the self, in the innermost, in the eternal, which each person carried within him. But where was this self, this innermost? It was not flesh and bone. It was not thought or consciousness. That was what the wise men taught. Where, then, was it? To press towards the self, towards Atman, was there another way that was worth seeking? Nobody showed the way. Nobody knew it, neither his father, nor the teachers and wise men, nor the holy songs. The Brahmins and their holy books knew everything, everything. They had gone into everything, the creation of the world, the origin of speech, food, inhalation, exhalation, the arrangement of the senses, the acts of the gods. They knew a tremendous number of things, but was it worthwhile knowing all these things if they did not know the one important thing, the only important thing? Many verses of the holy books, above all the Upanishads of Samaveda, spoke of this innermost thing. It is written, "Your soul is the whole world." It says that when a man is asleep, he penetrates his innermost and dwells in Atman. There was wonderful wisdom in these verses. All the knowledge of the sages was told here in enchanting language, pure as honey collected by the bees. No, this tremendous amount of knowledge collected and preserved by successive generations of wise Brahmins could not be easily overlooked. But where were the Brahmins, the priests, the wise men who were successful not only in having this most profound knowledge but in experiencing it? Where were the initiated who, attaining Atman in sleep, could retain it in consciousness, in life, everywhere, in speech and in action? Siddhartha knew many worthy Brahmins, above all his father holy, learned, of highest esteem. His father was worthy of admiration. His manner was quiet and noble. He lived a good life. His words were wise. Fine and noble thoughts dwelt in his head, but even he who knew so much, did he live in bliss? Was he at peace? Was he not also a seeker, insatiable? Did he not go continually to the holy springs with an insatiable thirst, to the sacrifices, to books, to the Brahmins' discourses? Why must he, the blameless one, wash away his sins and endeavor to cleanse himself anew each day? Was Atman then not within him? Was not then the source within his own heart? One must find the source within one's own self. One must possess it. Everything else was seeking a detour, error. These were Siddhartha's thoughts. This was his thirst, his sorrow. He often repeated to himself the words from one of the Chandogya Upanishads. In truth, the name of the Brahman is Satyam. Indeed, he who knows it enters the heavenly world each day. It often seemed near the heavenly world, but never had he quite reached it. Never had he quenched the final thirst. And among the wise men that he knew and whose teachings he enjoyed, there was not one who had entirely reached it, the heavenly world, not one who had completely quenched the eternal thirst. "Govinda," said Siddhartha to his friend, "Govinda, come with me to the banana tree. We will practice meditation." They went to the banana tree and sat down 20 paces apart. As he sat down, ready to pronounce the Om, Siddhartha softly recited the verse. Om is the bow, the arrow is the soul. Brahman is the arrow's goal, at which one aims unflinchingly. When the customary time for the practice of meditation had passed, Govinda rose. It was now evening. It was time to perform the evening ablutions. He called Siddhartha by his name. He did not reply. Siddhartha sat absorbed, his eyes staring as if directed at a distant goal, the tip of his tongue showing a little between his teeth. He did not seem to be breathing. He sat thus, lost in meditation, thinking Om, his soul as the arrow directed at Brahman. Some Samanas once passed through Siddhartha's town. Wandering ascetics, they were 3 thin, worn-out men, neither old nor young, with dusty and bleeding shoulders, practically naked, scorched by the sun, solitary, strange, and hostile lean jackals in the world of men. Around them hovered an atmosphere of still passion, of devastating service, of unpitying self-denial. In the evening, after the hour of contemplation, Siddhartha said to Govinda, "Tomorrow morning, my friend, Siddhartha is going to join the Samanas. He is going to become a Samana." Govinda blanched as he heard these words and read the decision in his friend's determined face, undeviating as the released arrow from the bow. Govinda realized from the first glance at his friend's face that now it was beginning. Siddhartha was going his own way. His destiny was beginning to unfold itself, and with his destiny, his own. And he became as pale as a dried banana skin. "Oh, Siddhartha," he cried, "will your father permit it?" Siddhartha looked at him like one who had just awakened. As quick as lightning, he read Govinda's soul, read the anxiety, the resignation. "We will not waste words, Govinda," he said softly. "Tomorrow at daybreak, I will begin the life of the Samanas. Let us not discuss it again." Siddhartha went into the room where his father was sitting on a mat made of bast. He went up behind his father and remained standing there until his father felt his presence. "Is it you, Siddhartha?" the Brahmin asked. "Then speak what is in your mind." Siddhartha said, "With your permission, father, I have come to tell you that I wish to leave your house tomorrow and join the ascetics. I wish to become a Samana. I trust my father will not object." The Brahmin was silent, so long that the stars passed across the small window and changed their design before the silence in the room was finally broken. His son stood silent and motionless with his arms folded. The father, silent and motionless, sat on the mat, and the stars passed across the sky. Then his father said, "It is not seemly for Brahmins to utter forceful and angry words, but there is displeasure in my heart. I should not like to hear you make this request a second time." The Brahmin rose slowly. Siddhartha remained silent with folded arms. "Why are you waiting?" asked his father. "You know why?" answered Siddhartha. His father left the room displeased and lay down on his bed. As an hour passed by and he could not sleep, the Brahmin rose, wandered up and down, and then left the house. He looked through the small window of the room and saw Siddhartha standing there with his arms folded, unmoving. He could see his pale robe shimmering. His heart troubled, the father returned to his bed. As another hour passed and the Brahmin could not sleep, he rose again, walked up and down, left the house, and saw the moon had risen. He looked through the window. Siddhartha stood there unmoving, his arms folded. The moon shone on his bare shin bones. His heart troubled. The father went to bed. He returned again after an hour, and again after 2 hours, looked through the window and saw Siddhartha standing there in the moonlight, in the starlight, in the dark. And he came silently again, hour after hour, looked into the room and saw him standing unmoving. His heart filled with anger, with anxiety, with fear, with sorrow. And in the last hour of the night, before daybreak, he returned again, entered the room, and saw the youth standing there. He seemed tall and a stranger to him. "Siddhartha," he said, "why are you waiting?" "You know why. Will you go on standing and waiting until it is day, noon, evening?" "I will stand and wait." "You will grow tired, Siddhartha." "I will grow tired." "You will fall asleep, Siddhartha." "I will not fall asleep." "You will die, Siddhartha." "I will die." "And would you rather die than obey your father?" Siddhartha has always obeyed his father. "So you will give up your project?" Siddhartha will do what his father tells him. The first light of day entered the room. The Brahmin saw that Siddhartha's knees trembled slightly, but there was no trembling in Siddhartha's face. His eyes looked far away. Then the father realized that Siddhartha could no longer remain with him at home, that he had already left him. The father touched Siddhartha's shoulder. "You will go into the forest," he said, "and become a Samana. If you find bliss in the forest, come back and teach it to me. If you find disillusionment, come back, and we shall again offer sacrifices to the gods together. Now go, kiss your mother and tell her where you are going. For me, however, it is time to go to the river and perform the first ablution." He dropped his hand from his son's shoulder and went out. Siddhartha swayed as he tried to walk. He controlled himself, bowed to his father, and went to his mother to do what had been told to him. As, with benumbed legs, he slowly left the still sleeping town at daybreak, a crouching shadow emerged from the last hut and joined the pilgrim. It was Govinda. "You have come?" said Siddhartha and smiled. "I have come," said Govinda.
Chapter 2. With the Samanas. On the evening of that day, they overtook the Samanas and requested their company and allegiance. They were accepted. Siddhartha gave his clothes to a poor Brahmin on the road and only retained his loincloth and earth-colored, unstitched cloak. He only ate once a day and never cooked food. He fasted 14 days. He fasted 28 days. The flesh disappeared from his legs and cheeks. Strange dreams were reflected in his enlarged eyes. The nails grew long on his thin fingers, and a dry, bristly beard appeared on his chin. His glance became icy when he encountered women. His lips curled with contempt when he passed through a town of well-dressed people. He saw businessmen trading, princes going to the hunt, mourners weeping over their dead, prostitutes offering themselves, doctors attending the sick, priests deciding the day for sowing, lovers making love, mothers soothing their children, and all were not worth a passing glance. Everything lied, stank of lies. They were all illusions of sense, happiness, and beauty. All were doomed to decay. The world tasted bitter. Life was pain. Siddhartha had one single goal: to become empty. To become empty of thirst, desire, dreams, pleasure, and sorrow, to let the self die. No longer to be self, to experience the peace of an emptied heart, to experience pure thought. That was his goal. When all the self was conquered and dead, when all passions and desires were silent, then the last must awaken, the innermost of being that is no longer self, the great secret. Silently, Siddhartha stood in the fierce sun's rays, filled with pain and thirst, and stood until he no longer felt pain and thirst. Silently he stood in the rain, water dripping from his hair onto his freezing shoulders, onto his freezing hips and legs. And the ascetic stood until his shoulders and legs no longer froze, till they were silent, till they were still. Silently he crouched among the thorns. Blood dripped from his smarting skin, ulcers formed, and Siddhartha remained stiff, motionless, till no more blood flowed, till there was no more pricking, no more smarting. Siddhartha sat upright and learned to save his breath, to manage with little breathing, to hold his breath. He learned, while breathing in, to quiet his heartbeat, learned to lessen his heartbeats, until there were few and hardly any more. Instructed by the eldest of the Samanas, Siddhartha practiced self-denial and meditation according to the Samana rules. A heron flew over the bamboo wood, and Siddhartha took the heron into his soul, flew over forest and mountains, became a heron, ate fishes, suffered heron hunger, used heron language, died a heron's death. A dead jackal lay on the sandy shore, and Siddhartha's soul slipped into its corpse. He became a dead jackal, lay on the shore, swelled, stank, decayed, was dismembered by hyenas, was picked at by vultures, became a skeleton, became dust, mingled with the atmosphere. And Siddhartha's soul returned, died, decayed, turned into dust, experienced the troubled course of the life cycle. He waited with new thirst, like a hunter at a chasm where the life cycle ends, where there is an end to causes, where painless eternity begins. He killed his senses, he killed his memory. He slipped out of his self in 1,000 different forms. He was animal, carcass, stone, wood, water, and each time he reawakened. The sun or moon shone. He was again self, swung into the life cycle, felt thirst, conquered thirst, felt new thirst. Siddhartha learned a great deal from the Samanas. He learned many ways of losing the self. He traveled along the path of self-denial through pain, through voluntary suffering and conquering of pain, through hunger, thirst, and fatigue. He traveled the way of self-denial through meditation, through the emptying of the mind of all images. Along these and other paths did he learn to travel. He lost his self 1,000 times, and for days on end he dwelt in non-being. But although the paths took him away from self, in the end, they always led back to it. Although Siddhartha fled from the self 1,000 times, dwelt in nothing, dwelt in animal and stone, the return was inevitable. The hour was inevitable when he would again find himself in sunshine or in moonlight, in shadow or in rain, and was again self, and Siddhartha again felt the torment of the onerous life cycle. At his side lived Govinda, his shadow. He traveled along the same path, made the same endeavors. They rarely conversed with each other apart from the necessities of their service and practices. Sometimes they went together through the villages in order to beg food for themselves and their teachers. "What do you think, Govinda?" Siddhartha asked on one of these begging expeditions. "Do you think we are any further? Have we reached our goal?" Govinda replied, "We have learned and we are still learning. You will become a great Samana, Siddhartha. You have learned each exercise quickly. The old Samanas have often praised you. Someday you will be a holy man, Siddhartha." Siddhartha said, "It does not appear so to me, my friend. What I have so far learned from the Samanas, I could have learned more quickly and easily in every inn, in a prostitute's quarter, amongst the carriers and dice players." Govinda said, "Siddhartha is joking. How could you have learned meditation, holding of the breath, and insensibility towards hunger and pain with those wretches?" And Siddhartha said softly, as if speaking to himself, "What is meditation? What is abandonment of the body? What is fasting? What is the holding of breath? It is a flight from the self. It is a temporary escape from the torment of self. It is a temporary palliative against the pain and folly of life. The driver of oxen makes this same flight, takes this temporary drug when he drinks a few bowls of rice, wine, or coconut milk in the inn. He then no longer feels his self, no longer feels the pain of life. He then experiences temporary escape. Falling asleep over his bowl of rice wine, he finds what Siddhartha and Govinda find when they escape from their bodies by long exercises and dwell in the non-self." Govinda said, "You speak thus, my friend, and yet you know that Siddhartha is no driver of oxen and a Samana is no drunkard. The drinker does indeed find escape. He does indeed find a short respite and rest, but he returns from the illusion and finds everything as it was before. He has not grown wiser. He has not gained knowledge. He has not climbed any higher." Siddhartha answered with a smile on his face, "I do not know. I have never been a drunkard. But that I, Siddhartha, only find a short respite in my exercises and meditation, and am as remote from wisdom, from salvation, as a child in the womb, that, Govinda, I do know." On another occasion, when Siddhartha left the wood with Govinda in order to beg for food for their brothers and teachers, Siddhartha began to speak and said, "Well, Govinda, are we on the right road? Are we gaining knowledge? Are we approaching salvation? Or are we perhaps going in circles, we who thought to escape from the cycle?" Govinda said, "We have learned much, Siddhartha. There still remains much to learn. We are not going in circles, we are going upwards. The path is a spiral. We have already climbed many steps." Siddhartha replied, "How old do you think is our oldest Samana, our worthy teacher?" Govinda said, "I think the eldest will be about 60 years old." And Siddhartha said, "He is 60 years old and has not attained nirvana. He will be 70 and 80 years old. And you and I, we shall grow as old as he and do exercises and fast and meditate. But we will not attain nirvana, neither he nor we. Govinda, I believe that amongst all the Samanas, probably not even one will attain nirvana. We find consolations, we learn tricks with which we deceive ourselves, but the essential thing the way we do not find." "Do not utter such dreadful words, Siddhartha," said Govinda. "How could it be that amongst so many learned men, amongst so many Brahmins, amongst so many austere and worthy Samanas, amongst so many seekers, so many devoted to the inner life, so many holy men, none will find the right way?" Siddhartha, however, said in a voice which contained as much grief as mockery, in a soft, somewhat sad, somewhat jesting voice, "Soon, Govinda, your friend will leave the path of the Samanas along which he has traveled with you so long. I suffer thirst, Govinda, and on this long Samana path, my thirst has not grown less. I have always thirsted for knowledge. I have always been full of questions. Year after year I have questioned the Brahmins. Year after year I have questioned the holy Vedas. Perhaps, Govinda, it would have been equally good, equally clever and holy if I had questioned the rhinoceros or the chimpanzee. I have spent a long time and have not yet finished. In order to learn this, Govinda, that one can learn nothing. There is, so I believe, in the essence of everything, something that we cannot call learning. There is, my friend, only a knowledge that is everywhere. That is Atman, that is in me and you, and in every creature. And I am beginning to believe that this knowledge has no worse enemy than the man of knowledge, than learning. Thereupon Govinda stood still on the path, raised his hands and said, Siddhartha, do not distress your friend with such talk. Truly, your words trouble me. Think, what meaning would our holy prayers have, the venerableness of the Brahmins, the holiness of the Samanas, if, as you say, there is no learning? Siddhartha, what would become of everything? What would be holy on earth? What would be precious and sacred? Govinda murmured a verse to himself, a verse from one of the Upanishads. He whose reflective pure spirit sinks into Atman knows bliss inexpressible through words. Siddhartha was silent. He whose reflective pure spirit sinks into Atman knows bliss inexpressible through words. Siddhartha was silent. He dwelt long on the words which Govinda had uttered. Yes, he thought, standing with bowed head. What remains from all that seems holy to us? What remains? What is preserved? And he shook his head. Once, when both youths had lived with the Samanas about 3 years and shared their practices, they heard from many sources a rumor, a report. Someone had appeared, called Gautama, the illustrious, the Buddha. He had conquered in himself the sorrows of the world and had brought to a standstill the cycle of rebirth. He wandered through the country preaching, surrounded by disciples, having no possessions, homeless, without a wife, wearing the yellow cloak of an ascetic, but with lofty brow, a holy man. And Brahmins and princes bowed before him and became his pupils. This report, this rumor, this tale was heard and spread here and there. The Brahmins talked about it in the town, the Samanas in the forest. The name of Gautama, the Buddha, continually reached the ears of the young men, spoken of well and ill, in praise and in scorn. Just as when a country is ravaged with the plague and rumor arises that there is a man, a wise man, a learned man, whose words and breath are sufficient to heal the afflicted, and as the report travels across the country and everyone speaks about it, many believe and many doubt it. Many, however, immediately go on their way to seek the wise man, the benefactor. In such a manner did that rumor, that happy report of Gautama the Buddha, the wise man from the race of Sakya, travel through the country. He possessed great knowledge, said the believers. He remembered his former lives. He had attained nirvana and never returned on the cycle. He plunged no more into the troubled stream of forms. Many wonderful and incredible things were reported about him. He had performed wonders, had conquered the devil, had spoken with the gods. His enemies and doubters, however, said that this Gautama was an idle fraud. He passed his days in high living, scorned the sacrifices, was unlearned, and knew neither practices nor mortification of the flesh. The rumors of the Buddha sounded attractive. There was magic in these reports. The world was sick, life was difficult, and here there seemed new hope. Here there seemed to be a message, comforting, mild, full of fine promises. Everywhere there were rumors about the Buddha. Young men all over India listened, felt a longing and a hope. And among the Brahmin sons in the towns and villages, every pilgrim and stranger was welcome if he brought news of him, the illustrious, the Sakya Muni. The rumors reached the Samanas in the forest, and Siddhartha and Govinda, a little at a time, every little item, heavy with hope, heavy with doubt. They spoke little about it, as the eldest Samana was no friend of this rumor. He had heard that this alleged Buddha had formerly been an ascetic and had lived in the woods, had then turned to high living and the pleasures of the world, and he held no brief for this Gautama. Siddhartha, Govinda once said to his friend, "Today I was in the village and a Brahmin invited me to enter his house, and in the house was a Brahmin's son from Magadha. He had seen the Buddha with his own eyes and had heard him preach. Truly, I was filled with longing, and I thought, I wish that both Siddhartha and I may live to see the day when we can hear the teachings from the lips of the Perfect One. My friend, shall we not also go hither and hear the teachings from the lips of the Buddha? Siddhartha said, I always thought that Govinda would remain with the Samanas. I always believed it was his goal to be 60 and 70 years old and still practice the arts and exercises which the Samanas teach. But how little did I know Govinda? How little did I know what was in his heart? Now, my dear friend, you wish to strike a new path and go and hear the Buddha's teachings. Govinda said, It gives you pleasure to mock me, no matter if you do, Siddhartha. Do you not also feel a longing, a desire to hear this teaching? And did you not once say to me, I will not travel the path of the Samanas much longer? Then Siddhartha laughed in such a way that his voice expressed a shade of sorrow and a shade of mockery. And he said, You have spoken well, Govinda. You have remembered well. But you must also remember what else I told you, that I have become distrustful of teachings and learning, and that I have little faith in words that come to us from teachers. But, very well, my friend, I am ready to hear that new teaching, although I believe in my heart that we have already tasted the best fruit of it. I have now. Govinda replied, I am delighted that you are agreed. But tell me, how can the teachings of the Gautama disclose to us its most precious fruit before we have even heard him? Siddhartha said, Let us enjoy this fruit and await further ones, Govinda. This fruit, for which we are already indebted to the Gautama, consists in the fact that he has enticed us away from the Samanas. Whether there are still other and better fruits, let us patiently await and see. On the same day, Siddhartha informed the eldest Samana of his decision to leave him. He told the old man with the politeness and modesty fitting to young men and students. But the old man was angry that both young men wished to leave him, and he raised his voice and scolded them strongly. Govinda was taken aback, but Siddhartha put his lips to Govinda's ear and whispered, Now I will show the old man that I have learnt something from him. Govinda, Govinda. He stood near the Samana, his mind intent. He looked into the old man's eyes and held him with his look, hypnotized him, made him mute, conquered his will, commanded him silently to do as he wished. The old man became silent, his eyes glazed, his will crippled, his arms hung down. He was powerless under Siddhartha's spell. Siddhartha's thoughts conquered those of the Samana. He had to perform what they commanded. And so the old man bowed several times, gave his blessings, and stammered his wishes for a good journey. The young man thanked him for his good wishes, returned his bow, and departed. On the way, Govinda said, Siddhartha, you have learned more from the Samanas than I was aware. It is difficult, very difficult to hypnotize an old Samana. In truth, if you had stayed there, you would have soon learned how to walk on water. I have no desire to walk on water, said Siddhartha. Let the old Samanas satisfy themselves with such arts.